in Indian economy, there are basically the sectors are generally divided on the basis of three categories. First, on the basis of nature, as we learned that there are three types of activities are there: primary sector activities, secondary sector activities, and tertiary sector activities. Clear? Primary sector will produce the raw materials for the other sectors. Secondary sector, it manufacture the goods based upon a product produced by the primary sector. Raw materials are transformed into the finished goods in a secondary sector, which is known as a manufacturing sector. And for the growth of primary and secondary, the desired activities which are required for the growth in a primary and secondary, these are generally provided by the tertiary sector, service sector, which is known as the service sector. We learned about them, their meanings, their examples. Clear? Second, as a classification based on a ownership, private and a public, and third classification as a classification based upon the working conditions of workers. Clear? So let's continue the first classification on the basis of nature. What is as the interrelationship between these three sectors: primary, secondary, and tertiary? Primary, secondary, and tertiary. Clear? So what is the interrelationship between? So economic activities are highly interdependent. Farmers produce wheat. That wheat used in bakery for a transformation of a wheat into, or a wheat flour into, as the bread and biscuits. That particular bakery is the manufacturing sector, secondary sector. Clear? For the movement of goods from agriculture fields towards the bakery, or a bakery after the production of a bread biscuit, movement of these materials towards the market, we need the transportation, which provides basically as by the tertiary sector. Clear? For the investment, for the increasing the growth in a bakery, in an industrial sector, secondary sector, we require a money. That money complete through that money provided by the banks. Clear? So this is also as a tertiary sector. All these three sectors are the interdependent. These three sectors are interdependent. Clear? Now here the question has arisen here: how to count the various goods and services and the total production in each sector? How can we calculate? How can we count or calculate as a various number of goods and services produced in a various sectors? Goods and services produced in various sectors. So how can we calculate them? So generally there are thousands of goods and services are being produced. Thousands of goods and services generally produced in economy. They are being produced daily in economy. It is almost impossible to count and add up each and every item being produced. This task is huge and enormous. To tackle such problem, the economists have suggested that actual number of items of goods should not be counted and added up. Instead, the values of a final goods and services should be used. National income includes only as a final goods, not only as the intermediate goods. For example, transformation of a raw cotton towards a cotton cloth, it needs to go through the different manufacturing stages. Ginning, where the cotton seeds are separated from the cotton balls. Clear? Then as the weaving process, then the cutting, stitching. So these are the different stages. We don't have to calculate the value of those goods which are go through the different stages, but we have to emphasize, we have to use the final goods. Final good is a cotton cloth, which is ready to sell in market, which is exhibit in a market for the selling purposes. That particular product, it should be as used. The final goods, it should use for the calculation of national income. Otherwise, if when we use the such number of manufacturing stages, the value of a goods in a different stages, then it will be not as an easy task, because such goods are manufactured by the different factories, different factory owners. We are here only emphasizing over the final goods, the value of final goods produced in primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors. Primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Clear? In a primary sector, when the wheat it produced, after the production of a wheat, when it's selling in a market, their final value is included under the national income. Clear? Afterwards, same wheat used in after grinding, wheat used in a bakery for a manufacturing of a biscuits and a bread which is ready to the sell in the market, their value it should be as calculated under the national income. Final value of a final goods, it should be as calculated for the national income, which generally as obtained from primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Clear? Primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sectors. Clear? So what are the final goods and the intermediate goods? What are they generally? The distinction between the final goods and intermediate goods should be clearly understood, because value of only final goods and services, and not of the intermediate goods and services is taken into account for measuring the national income, because a national income has generally used for a calculation of a GDP, gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. Clear? For the gross domestic product, we need as the final goods. Final goods. Clear? So what are these final goods? All goods which are meant either, I'm repeating again, all goods which are meant either for consumption by consumers, for investigate by the firms are called the final goods. I'm repeating again, those goods which are ready to consume by the consumers. Means cotton cloth is ready, it can be as a use by the consumers. Their value, it can be as use, their value. Or for investment by the firms. Investment means when the in a production sites, when the industries they are using the some kind of a sources for the increasing the production. Investment. When the industries they are generally using as a money for increasing as a production, as known as a investment. I'm repeating again the meaning of a final goods. All goods which are meant either for consumption by the consumers or for investment by the firms is known as a final goods. They are finished goods meant for the final use. It is important to note that the final use of a product is only for a consumption or investment. These are not resold, nor they enter into a final goods. Clear? So all goods purchased by the consumer households are final goods because they are meant for the final consumption. All goods purchased by the firms for the investment are final goods. Keep this thing in your mind, as a consumers acquire goods for consumption, whereas a firms acquire for the investment. Firms acquire goods for the investment. Investment means as the capital formation. For capital formation, they use the goods for a investment. Clear? They generally use goods for the investment. So these are the final goods. I'm repeating again. Final goods are what? Those goods which are ready to consume by the consumers or either used for the further investment. Investment is known as the final goods. Is known as final goods. Clear? Final goods. They are generally known as the final goods which are ready to consume by the consumers. Ready to consume by the consumers. But there are the other goods are there which are known as intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. So what are these intermediate goods? Those goods and services, all those goods which are meant either for further production, after the ginning process. The cotton balls are used for spinning purposes, weaving purposes. These are the intermediate goods. We can't directly consume them. We can't directly use the cotton balls. Clear? We need to refinement of a raw material into the finished goods. Into finished goods. Clear? I'm repeating again. Intermediate goods, all those goods which are meant either for further production, processing, for resale in the same year is known as the intermediate goods. Because here the ginning process performed by the one factory, it will given the cotton balls to the other factory, so that factory which has done the work of a ginning, their final product as the cotton balls, but their value it can't be calculated because it can't consume directly by the consumers, not used by the consumers directly. Clear? Goods for further production means they are used to produce other goods and they move from one stage of production to the another stage. One stage of production to the another stage in the manufacture of a final goods. So when a raw material and a semi-finished goods are generally intermediate goods, they are known as the intermediate goods. Raw materials and semi-finished. Semi-finished, that product which can't use by the consumers is a semi-finished goods. Semi-finished goods are known as the intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. For example, biscuits are the final goods, but the flour, milk, sugar, salt, etc. used by making of a biscuits are the intermediate goods. Are intermediate goods. Same as the residential buildings is a final product, but the use of a brick, sand, rocks are the intermediate goods. They are the intermediate goods. Cement is also intermediate goods. Clear? Used to construction of the building, and at the end when the building is ready to use by the consumer is a final good. Is a final good. Clear? So the significance of a distinction between final goods and the intermediate goods lies in fact that national income includes value of only final goods. It's only based on a final goods. Its reason is that value of intermediate goods is already included in the value of a final goods. Value of final goods. For example, that trouser, that jeans trouser which is ready to use by the consumer, their price is set which will be as the value of those different stages which use for a transformation of raw material into the jeans trouser. Jeans trouser. Clear? That trouser which is ready to sell in a market, which exhibit in market for the selling purposes, their value includes the value of all those stages which included under the transformation of a raw material into as the cotton trousers. Clear? Cotton trousers. So the value of a biscuits already includes the value of a flour, milk, sugar, etc. Flour, milk, sugar, etc. Presently, as a most number of buildings which are selling in cities, they are priced at more than the 32 or 40 lakhs, 40, 50 lakhs. It includes the value of a land, total number of inputs which included, which used for a manufacturing, for the building of a that particular building. So all the goods which used for a building of a that particular structure, their value has also included under the final goods. Final good of a building, when that building or a that apartment, when it will be as a cell in a society. Clear? So if we include the value of intermediate goods along with the value of a final goods, it will lead to a double counting. Then under such circumstances, our national income, it will be as a higher. In one side, we are here calculating the intermediate goods. In the other side, we are also calculating the final goods also. It means as a we here count the value of these products as a double. So the counting of a value same product more than the once, it is avoid the problem of a double counting, that when we emphasizing over calculation of a final goods. When we calculate the value of a final goods, it solve the problem of a double counting, that value of only final goods and not of intermediate goods is included in the estimation of national income. Estimation of national income. Clear? Estimation of national income. Generally, the value of final goods and services produced in a particular year in each sector provides the total production of the sector. Total production of that particular part of the sector, which is generally describes with the help of GNP and GDP. And GDP. The value of a final goods are generally helpful for the calculation of a GNP and a GDP. GNP stands for the gross national product. Gross national product. Gross national product. And GDP stands for the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. Domestic product. Gross domestic product. Now, what's the difference between these two? GNP and a GDP. GNP and GDP. GNP, gross national product, it consists of the value of all goods and services. It is the value of GNP. GNP is consists of the value of all goods and services. All goods and services produced within the country. Produced within the country. Produced within the country, as well as the net income. Net income means total income earned from abroad. Total income earned from abroad. By whom? By those which are the citizens of India, but temporary basis, they are moving towards the other countries for the earnings. For earnings. For the economic activities, they displaced, they migrated towards the other countries for the earnings. They earn income from such countries, for example, as Dubai, Iran, Iraq, Canada, America. They move towards such countries for their earnings. Afterwards, their value, they spending their money in our country. In our country, GNP includes the value of final goods as well as the income earned from abroad. That is the GNP, gross national product. Gross national product, because that particular person is an asset of our country. It is a citizen of our country. It earn in abroad, but spending the money in our country. Clear? They are settled in a foreign countries like as a Dubai, Iran, Iraq since last 8 to 10 years. They earn their income from such countries, but spending on their family which is residing in our country. So the value, the income which is earned from the abroad is included under the GNP, gross national product. Gross national product. Whereas a GDP, gross domestic product, it means as the GDP, gross national product. It includes only the value of a domestic. Domestic means the final value of all those goods and services which are produced within the boundaries of a country. GDP, gross domestic product, generally it includes the value of all those goods and services. Goods and services which are produced within a boundaries of a country. Within a boundaries of our country. Clear? Which is known as the gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. It is known as the gross domestic product. Clear? Till there any doubts? Yes. That is known as the GDP. 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 Our next topic is a historical change in sectors. Historical change in sectors. Historical change in sectors. Historical change in sectors. During the process of economic development, as a result of the impact of investment in isolation, investment limitedly on a different sectors of economy led as the isolation, because most of the investment it generally occurred in a primary sector, because of which the growth of a primary sector it is as the more comparatively the secondary and tertiary sectors. That's why the primary sector which provides the more job opportunities. More job opportunities. Green Revolution, which introduced in the 1960s, it was a result of that investment of a government in the field of agriculture or a primary sector to increase the production of agricultural crops. Agricultural crops. When a government invests, government or the private owners, entrepreneurs, they invest money in a particular sector or a part of a sector for the growth is known as the structural change. It is known as the structural change. When investment occur, structural change, it is known as the structural change. Structural change. Structural change. When investment is generally occur on a particular sector of economy, is known as the structural change, which is generally known as the structural change. In other words, structural change studied in terms of the contribution of studies. In other words, structural change studied in terms of the contribution of different sectors and subsectors, is the variation over time, as a result of economic development. So as the economic growth, I'm repeating again, as the meaning of a structural change, the structural change studied in terms of the contribution of different sectors and subsectors, different sectors and subsectors is the variation over time as a result of economic development. When India got the independence in 1947, afterwards 1950s, it was a year when the Planning Commission set up. Planning Commission, it was set up for the sectoral growth. It's not possible for the existing government to develop complete of an economy. Development occur or start in all the different sectors, primary, secondary, tertiary, as a collectively. Not possible task for the government. They started the growth of sectors in a turn-wise. First, their priority it was as to feed population, for which they first emphasizing over the growth of agriculture, for which a green revolution introduced. In the era of 1970s, in that time period, they started to invest in a money in a growth of industries, secondary sector. And after the 1970s and 80s, tertiary sector, it grows. That's why presently tertiary sector, the more job opportunities are existing in a tertiary sector because of the investment. Growth of different services, banking, insurance, marketing, transport, communication, health, education, it led to the provide more job opportunities. More job opportunities, such job opportunities which earlier not available. That's why the disguised unemployed, they exist in a primary sector. Those people which were not having as on jobs in other sectors, they is directly and indirectly dependent on primary sector, which were known as a disguised. As you read earlier, disguised means what? When more people are employed as compared to the demand is known as disguised unemployed. Disguised unemployed. For example, here is a 1 acre of a land is there. That land required only as a 1% for the production in whole of the year. Throughout the year, 1 or 2% are required for the production. If here as the entrepreneur is there, employer is the employer, it can give the 100 rupees each to the both. 100 rupees each to the both on monthly basis. But in an situation when the people are not getting the jobs in other sectors, they depended on a same agriculture fields. Inclusion of a more number of workers in a more number of workers in a primary sector, in agricultural sector, that burden decreased the per capita income. How? Because employer earlier given to the both of the two workers as 100 rupees each, but the inclusion of 3 more workers on agriculture field, it will not influence the production, because production raised to the land, to the soil. Here we not change any kind of the pattern of the inputs. Land is a similar, it is a fixed, or the soils are the same, but the number of the workers are increasing. So when the number of workers, they will be as increasing in a working sites, then those 200 rupees which 100 each given to the 2 of the workers, now it will be distributed among the 5. Inclusion of a 3 plus 2, 5 workers are employed in the same agriculture field. So the 200 it will divide among the 5, because agriculture is only as a sector where the production is generally the earnings are generally occurred after the harvesting of a crop, after the 5 to 6 months. So the farmers which are having as a limited sources or limited capital sources, they can't increase their wages, their income. Those 200 it will be divided among the 5, means 40 rupees each. When the income reduce, it means their demands also affected. Demand, they will demand as a lesser number of goods. Clear? So such are the disguised unemployed, which means as some inclusion of a more number of workers in a working sites as compared to their demands. Clear? Is that clear? So the net national income can be broadly divided into the income emerging from the commodity sector. Commodity goods sector, not emphasis over the services sector, only as a goods commodity sector. Commodity sector like as agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and small enterprises, and income emerging from the services in later. First, we are emphasizing over the goods which are produced by the primary and the manufacturing sector, secondary sector. Then we in later the use of those services which are helpful for a production in a primary and secondary are also included. Clear? Is that clear? This much for today. Any questions? Is there any questions?